So like I said, today was the birthday of His Excellency Emeka Idioha, yes. So some dignitaries were there, P2B and some other persons, so they were able to air their own views about democracy in Nigeria, where some say that democracy have not failed, whereas some say that it has failed. But P2B was the one that was saying that it has failed, and he gave reasons why he said that this democracy in Nigeria have died patapata. That what took our heroes many years to build, that this government have destroyed it in just few years in office. Take a little for yourself and let me know your views in the comment section.
And this is a straightaway yes or no question. Do you think democracy is failing in Africa? No, you start first, sir.
No.
You don't think it's failing? Great. You, sir?
Yes.
It's failing. And?
Yes and no.
I know that was going to come. The journalists will not let go. So we have yes, no, yes, and no. Great. So you say it's not failing. Why do you say it's not failing?
Thank you very much. Before I go into that, let me congratulate my dear brother, Right Honorable Emeka Ehedoha, on this very auspicious celebration of your 60th birthday, Senior Emeka, and your dear wife. I said no, because even from almost the near conclusions of the lead presenter, Bishop Kuka, he did say that democracy is work in progress. And even from our own experiences here in Nigeria, government in, government out, from 1999 to the date, democratically elected, we have seen how government handled near similar issues differently. So I would like to say that it has more to do with the operators of a democratic system at a given time. If they play by the rules and they follow due process, democracy works. If they do otherwise, of course, it will be failing. So in our case, I would say it falters, it gets up, is work in progress. And I believe that we should not lose sight of the fact that democracy for now in Nigeria is the best system of government that we can have. And it is our responsibility as players to walk the walk and walk the talk and ensure that it works in Nigeria and in Africa.
Okay, fair enough. I was going to ask you one more question, but we have to get round the panel. So you say, yes, it is failing. Why do you say so?
Well, if you look at what Bishop Cook has said, he says it's a work in progress. Let me follow my brother when he said about 1999. If you look at where we are today, it's like they started in 1999, laid the foundation. Some people came and took it to a decking, and some people were trying to raise it to first floor, and some people came and knocked everything down. That's the situation where we are now. Everything has been knocked down. Nothing works. And I'm somebody who can say this exemplarily. I became a governor through the court when President Obasanjo and Atiku were in government. I did not pay the court 1 naira. I was sitting in my house, in the office, and the court declared me winner. When a governor is hosting them, it can't happen in Nigeria today. When I was being impeached, the president sent people to come and intervene on my behalf. Kanu Namani came begging House people not to impeach me. Today, the president impeaches the person. So that is the thing. So it's collapsed. So it's failed. They were begging my house not to impeach me. And they were PDP. I was in Abga. And they were begging. President was calling me and said, Peter, are you okay? Well, even when I was impeached, President Obasanjo called me and said, are you okay? Are you safe? When I go back from the court, when court eventually declared me under Andioba, President Yaradua called my phone in London and said, congrats. I said, President, I can't come back because, you know, if I come back, these people, he said, tell me the flight in which you're coming back. And I told him, When I came, it's the first time military people came to receive me at the airport. I couldn't believe it and took me straight to him. Now the president will ask me not to come back here again. So it's failed. Let's talk about how we are going to rebuild it. It's collapsing.
I'm glad that my last respondent said yes and no. So hopefully we'll be able to see how we'll balance it.
Yeah, I think we are looking at democracy within the context of Africa, not just Nigeria. And I listened to the speaker very well. He talked about the challenges, but I'll go even further. I don't know whether many of us were aware of the meeting last week in Qatar between the president of Rwanda and the president of the Democratic Republic of Congo over the war that has been going on there. But what I found very striking is how the two leaders could even meet. Because a few days before that meeting, the president of Rwanda granted an interview. And in that interview, he was very brutal on the president of the Republic of Congo. He gave an anecdote that there was this report that he read somewhere that an Italian man, an Italian who lived in Belgium, said that when he was in Belgium, that the current president of Democratic Republic of Congo, Felix, was a driver for him, a delivery driver. He was selling pizza. That's according to President Kagame. So he said, the Italian man said, when I heard that Felix became the president of Congo, he said, I laughed. Felix, who couldn't deliver pizza, of Congo, a man who was so incompetent in his early life that he couldn't deliver pizza. That's the kind of president you have, the Republic of Congo has saddled the side with. I don't think that story is true, but that's beside the point. The point really is that there are challenges for every country when it comes to management of politics. What the lesson for us is democracy is about serving the public good. It's not about the... That's why I agree to an extent with what His Excellency said. It's a work in progress. But I also agree with what His Excellency Peter Obi said, because there are also challenges that we can see within our own environment. But we have to look at both sides, the challenges as well as the prospects, and the role we can play to make this democracy better. That's what I will say for now.
Okay. So where would you say that it is failing? If you say that it is failing, because...
No, the problem really is not with democracy per se, it's with the operators. We all know this. I mean, the same democracy that people have been talking about the United States for years, for decades, you can see the same democracy within the last... Can we say that the democracy we had in America in the last decades is the same democracy we have had in the last 2 months? That brings to us the role that individual can play within a system. So it's not peculiar to Africa. It's about how do we ensure that the operators play by the rules. I think that, for me, is the critical issue.
Okay. I'm coming back to you now. I don't even know whether to say Right Honorable Tambuwal or to say Your Excellency. But I'm going to come back to you because you mentioned the operators. And I understand why, you know, it would seem that the conversation is being localized. While I know that, I mean, the theme of the discussion we're having today is whether democracy is working in Africa. However, you know, Nigeria is a very significant country in Africa. You have said democracy is working. There have been many times that, you know, we've talked about how democracy we need to define what our own democracy is. We heard Bishop Kuka give a number of definitions. We also heard former President Olusegun Obasanjo give a number of definitions. But there are those who have talked about homegrown democracy, Afrocentric democracy. I don't know whether, is it the nature of the definition of democracy that is the problem here in Africa, particularly in Nigeria? Or is it, as you've said, the operators not simply wanting?
In those times,
by 2/3, each member had to vote.
Each member had to vote. And you know that Parliament is guided by the Constitution, by its rules, and by precedents. In this same National Assembly, we have the same Constitution, in a way, under Section 305. It has not been amended since the commencement of this democracy. We have our standing rules, and we have precedents of how 2/3 were able to be established in those instances where emergency was declared in Plateau, emergency was declared in Borno, Adama, and Yobe. And we stuck by the rules. And were guided by the Constitution. What happened in the last one? So I still insist that you need to check out the operators of the system.
I have asked that question because Bishop Kuka, when he was speaking, made reference to Lee Kuan Yew. And I know that you were in, is it Singapore or Thailand very recently? Indonesia. Well, he was making reference to, trying to compare, the democracies in Africa and the democracy practiced in those countries. He made reference to Lee Kuan Yew, who was not exactly seen as a Democrat. And, the reasons were given. But it has been able to deliver. Today, everybody hails the Asian tigers. They talk about the dividends of democracy in those places. People are beginning to look to China, and they're wondering, why is it that their system of government is working for them? Should we be looking more to what they're doing? Because at the end of the day, what do people really want? Is it to be able to conduct elections? Or do they want their economy to be better? Do they want to feel safe in their countries? Do they want the dividends, so to speak, the freedoms that democracy assures? So that's why I asked that question about the type of democracy that we have. Do you think that we have really found the system that works for us?
Well, I wouldn't say to China. China is not democratic. And I'm not going to compare ourselves with Singapore. It's a country of less than 5 million people. But I'll compare ourselves with Indonesia. Indonesia is 280 million. And coincidentally, the country with the highest number of Muslims. We should look at their democracy. They have what you call proportional representative. That is what I've always championed and we should do. You cannot have, let me even go back, no country in the past 3 years conducted the election had less than 30% of registered voters participate in the election, and they held it. Everyone was, go and check from South Africa to Mexico to Indonesia, they were not less than 60%. Nigeria was 23% of registered voters. In that 23%, Nigeria is the only country where you can be declared a winner without receiving 50% plus one of the vote. Our own was 37%. And there's no proportional representation, which is why you can't have opposition here. Because if you had that, what he said wouldn't have happened. Because the person there now have 37% of the vote. Call it 40. In the Senate, you would have 44 members. PDP, with their leader, would have had about 34 members, and Labour would have had 24. In fact, we should have actually formed government. You cannot have a minority person sitting in government with everything, chasing everybody out, destroying everything. We must change it and have proportional representative so that you are giving what you elected. That is how it works. And when we do that, go and see it in Indonesia. In Indonesia, the president's party is not the leading party in the parliament, but they have proportional representative, which brings proper checks and balances. Like he said, it's the operators. That is why I said his argument showed that it's failing. Because the operators now have failed it. That is when we go back, it is failing.
Let's spread this conversation. Let's extend it across Africa. Last year in the world, over 40 elections national elections were conducted. In Africa here, I know that a number of countries, neighboring Ghana, Senegal, we witnessed quite a number of countries go to the elections, go to the polls. It does appear that, when we talk about this particular conversation, we are looking very strictly at Nigeria. What do you think we can learn? Because you have said yes and no. You have given examples of where you think it's working and where you think it's failing. What do you think that when we bring this conversation home, His Excellency Peter Obi has said we should look at Indonesia. What other African countries can we look at to say, this is working, this isn't?
I think the bottom line at the end of the day is that democracy must serve the public good. I listened to Bishop Kuka when he was talking about Indonesia, Singapore. He could easily have talked about Rwanda, for instance, as a model in Africa, because at least people believe that the system is working for the majority of the people. Incidentally, I've never been to Rwanda, but I hear a lot of good things about Rwanda. But there are also people who believe that Rwanda is not a model. So that tells you about the way people reason about this democracy thing. Yeah, it's working for the ordinary people. But the elite are also complaining that there are issues of human rights, there are issues of justice. So at the end of the day, there is no perfect democracy anywhere in the world. But what is essential is that government, by any means, must serve the public good. I think, for me, that is the message we should all take from here.
And at this point, I have to thank members of my panel. His Excellency, Right Honorable Aminu Tambuwal, thank you so much for being on this panel. Your Excellency, Peter Obi, thank you so much for being on the panel. And my dear senior colleague, Olusegun Wadeni, thank you so much for being on this panel.
But the truth of the matter is that APC have destroyed democracy in Nigeria, starting from the time of Buhari. Because Buhari imposed himself on us. He did not actually win the election because he came with threats. And because Jonathan was a peaceful man, he succumbed and said, okay, carry on. So from the time of Buhari, they've destroyed democracy in Nigeria. And Peter was right. Could you imagine impeaching the governor? And then the president was not the one calling the governor. But in this current time, the president is the one that is even impeaching governor. It doesn't make any sense. It does not make any single atom of sense. This is a clear example that our democracy is dead. Is dead. Obasanjo said the same thing, that our democracy in Nigeria is dead. You can argue it as well to argue, but it's dead. It's far gone. Because this is not what we know. The democracy is meant to be for the people and by the people. But right now, it's no longer for the people. Because how can you remove an elected governor, sitting governor, and then you now put somebody that was not elected by the people? So that means you are imposing leaders on people now. You're not forcing them to have their leaders. Because tell me, how did Godswill Akpabio become the Senate president? Someone that did not even win the Senate primaries, but eventually became the Senate president, which I don't know how it happened. As a question was always right, that if not for corruption, most of Nigerian leaders are not even qualified to be in that seat. And we saw it, we thought that it was a joke. It's the truth. It's the gospel truth. But I guys, hear your own views. Do you think that democracy is still alive in Nigeria or it have died? Let me hear your own views in the comment section. Tell you guys in my next video.